Hello. Let me do my checks and I'll be with you in a moment. We're going to have a good podcast today. We have a lot to go over and it's going to be good. We're going to have a good podcast today. I think that's we have me. A lot to go over and it's going to be good. Excellent. We're going to have a good podcast today. Okay, excellent. I have that in the house, and let me just do one more thing, and we'll be good to go. I just need to get over here. Let me do my checks and I'll be okay. We are in the house. My name is Len David Livesey, and I'm your full spectrum Gnostic. And today we have a very exciting subject for you. We're talking about Mars. And there's some, maybe a lot of people don't know what's going on, but this is very, very, very scary stuff. Okay. And this is hot off the press. My name is Len David Livesey. And today we're talking, is there proof of ancient nuclear war on Mars? Science, all of the scientists, we got so many space probes going around Mars looking for stuff, and we have discovered something. Okay. There's always been rumors that, life on Mars, something happened to it. Okay. And there's different, and there is a lot of proof that there's ancient civilization on Mars. And even in our science, we believe that life started on Earth and then went to Mars. But they've been analyzing the soil on Mars and they have discovered something. Mars have a layer of radioactive debris, radioactive substances that's covered the surface of the planet. And to science, this does not make any sense because this is the same debris you would have if you had a bomb go off. And you should have, even if that occurred, you should have this debris in one area or two areas or something like that, or in pockets, but not evenly spread all over the surface. And this is what is freaking science out because there is a theory now that we've always thought that Mars once upon a time looked it like the Earth. We now have proof that Mars did have oceans, did have everything. But Mars is damaged. And we can see some of the damage on Mars. Mars got a giant crack that goes on for hundreds of years. Mars got all kind of stuff. And Mars got a lot of strange features. This is what I'm showing in some of the pictures here. Some of the ruins of things that, you know, back in the 1800s, they thought Mars had canals and they was doing agriculture on Mars because they would see things. And we told everybody that that was not true and whatever. And now that we got all of our space probes going over there, we have taken some very strange pictures. And we're only seeing a few of the pictures that they have released to the public. Who knows how many hundreds of thousands of pictures they haven't let us see? Because they're only let us seeing a very small portion of the pictures that they have taken. And how they're keeping this out of our thing is because, now, NASA used to have a public charter. So now they're teaming with universities and everything and things like that. And that means that these things are not really released to the public. So we don't really have access. We only have access to a small portion which is released. And there's a theory now that they might have an idea of what happened to Mars. It seems like Mars was destroyed. It doesn't seem like this was a natural thing to where something happened and maybe Mars got hit by a meteor, like what we think about happened to the dinosaurs or whatever. What they're saying is now is they are saying some very strange stuff. And they believe now that life and civilization on Mars was destroyed. And that leads into a lot of crazy questions. How could life on Mars have been destroyed? And if life on Mars was destroyed, could life on Earth be next? And if you think about us today with our nuclear weapons, even if us and Russia and got into a nuclear war, we would, if you came back 100 or 1,000 years from now, you would see pockets of radiation. The radiation wouldn't be spread, of the radiation levels would be spread evenly all over the planet. So were they using some kind of, you know, weapons we don't know about? Were Was this some kind of war? Now we read about some of this, and there is some ancient books. You know, I like to read all the crazy stuff. There is books that talk about this. So let's go back. See, here's some of the strange things they find. But these, they call these rocks. A lot of the strange things they found on Mars don't look like rocks. A lot of them, we don't know what they are. We just take pictures. And we have so far captured things that look like animal life or some kind of rodent life or some kind of, but we're just taking pictures. The problem is we don't have motion picture cameras on Mars. Maybe they do, but they haven't released any of that to us. They're only taking pictures. So we're only seeing live steals. But let's get it back into some of the old books. Some of the old books that talk about what might have happened on Mars is the Bible. The Bible talk about that there was a war in heaven. Okay. And in the Bible, it says that the devil was cast down, but it doesn't talk about too much about this war. It just said there was a war, but it makes it seem like the war was not here. Now, when you get into the Hindu texts, you know, modern Hinduism is 3,500 years old. Nobody knows how long ancient Hinduism is. But when you get into the Hindu text, they talk about this war that happened long time ago, and how they had their vimanas, and how they were throwing lightning bolts and destroying things, and how they had these ships that could fly into space and everything like that. And they talk about stuff. But with that, when the gods would throw their lightning bolts, the city would go up like, well, the city would, explode as bright as the sun. All the clay pots would break, people's hair would fall out, the people would have to jump in the river and wash themselves, people would die of strange diseases, all the birds would fall out of the air and die, the elephants would burst into flame. Okay, this is what Oppenheimer was talking about when we first exploded the nuclear bombs over Japan. But the same type of stuff we observed in Japan and we saw when we was doing the nuclear testing is talked about in minute detail in Hindu texts. And the Hindu texts talk about that this war was way beyond the earth. It was not just a war on the earth that the gods was fighting. Okay. We have another book. See, we don't really see, and when we get into the iron, when we get into the Sumerian texts talk about. Remember when the Anunnaki came here, the Anunnaki talk about how when they came to the earth to mine gold, They talk about that they did not only mine gold on the earth, they also mined gold in the Esprit, which was the far off lands. And after the old ones was destroyed, we talked about that before because they blasphemed against God. The ones that had clover feet and leather skin. The new ones was created, that was us, to help with the work because the work was hard. But in the book of Anki, it talks about that they were also mining on Mars and on the moon, and most uh, they did not use that many humans for that work because we was unsuitable for that work and we did not last long. Okay, our life expectancies was very short. But even with them, it got the conditions on Mars kept deteriorating to the point where they abandoned the Esprit. Okay. And they abandoned all of the far off lands. Some people believe this is why there's not only strange ruins on Mars, there's also strange ruins. Like, look at that thing. Is that a bear? What is that? We don't know. It's just a rock. But we don't really know. But we have found evidence that seems like, there's some kind of ruins on the moon, there's ruins on Mars. We have even found things beyond when we're sending space probes on outer space. We have saw things on asteroids which we think are artificial. We have seen a lot of things. But Lynn, how could this be? We've been around a long time. Yes, a long time. 100,000 years. Our writing only goes back 6,000 years. The Earth is 4.2 billion years old. Somebody was saying this, that if you compressed all the all if you compress the history of the earth into a 24-hour clock, the existence of man would be in the last 2 or 3 minutes before midnight. That's how little we know about this planet. 98% of the time of the earth history, we was not here. We know nothing about the history of our world. We know nothing about the history of Mars. And as we dig in the earth, not only looking on Mars, but these other planets, we are coming across very, very, very strange stuff. But getting back to what I said earlier, science, there's a theory now that what happened to Mars, first they was thinking that Mars slowly over periods of millions of years that the oceans and things boiled away, and that over millions or billions of years that the earth plant slowly died. There is no proof of that on Mars. There is proof that whatever happened extremely fast and extremely rapid. Okay. What would have the power to do that? Was there a war there? And if there was war between the aliens or between them, or if Mars was around during this war that was described in the Bible, and if they had weapons like that, what would we do if the earth came under attack? Could we survive? Okay. We we do not know. And this is why scientists need to find out. But at first, one of the things we're trying to do on Mars, since Mars is littered with all kind of strange things, ancient ruins, but a lot of things are in pieces. And we're finding strange stuff. We're finding things that look like domes, things that look like pyramids, these underground tunnels. Some we have found underground structures on Mars. We have found great caverns on Mars that's below the surface. We now know that all of the oceans of Mars did not boil away. Now that we're doing tests from our satellites and from our probes, we know that a lot of the water went inside the planet some kind of way. So we talked about hollow Earth. We could be talking about hollow Mars. We do not know. But we are talking about an enigma that we need to figure out. And the reason why we think this is so important that we need to figure this out is because what there's an old saying, what goes around comes around. And what happened to Mars might easily happen to the Earth one day. Okay. Look at this picture. See, there's several things, science try to say these are just rock formations. Some of these things don't look like rock formations. Is there actually life still on Mars? Remnants? Is there still things up there? This is this is the unknown. So, to freak people out, we're going to go back even deeper before the Anunnaki. We're going to go back even further. Because if you know the Bible and other books, it talks about there was a war in heaven. This war in heaven, probably the way we can calculate it, was probably around 15, 13,000 years ago when this war was fought. But we have discovered by reading some ancient texts, they talk about before that war, there was another war. And in that war was a really, really big war. And in that war, because they talk about how there used to be a planet between Mars and Jupiter. And this planet was destroyed in that war. Okay. See, we're talking about weapons we can't even imagine. And if there's beings in outer space that can fight wars like we see in Star Wars or in Star Trek and whatever, and if they had weapons like that, you know, and tens of thousands of years ago, what are we going to do with our F-16s and our F-22s? This is what you see in the alien attack movies. That when the aliens come, we're able to send up our little planes and defeat the aliens. How would that be possible if they're able to do all of this stuff? And if they was carving faces and making cities and doing all this stuff thousands and thousands of years ago. And we have talked about before in this podcast that they supposedly are returning. And what would we do if they return tomorrow? Okay. And if something had the power to do the damage that we're seeing on Mars. It seems like on Mars, the atmosphere to forget the radiation that we're detecting. This is not one or two nuclear explosions. You're talking hundreds or thousands of nuclear explosions. Okay. To do the damage. Or maybe they're using types of weapons we don't even know exist today. Okay. Maybe they got weapons which would make our little atom bomb seem like firecrackers. Okay. But there is still some strange things on Mars. Even though all of that occurred, as you can see in these pictures, and a lot of this stuff, we don't know what it is. Are those trees? Are those rock formations down there? What are those things? The problem is we don't have a guide. And our little alien friends are not giving us any real answers. Because maybe they don't want us to know what happened. Okay. And maybe, you know, we need to figure this out because, we don't want to end up the same way. And the reason we're working on Mars so much is because, as you know, not only is Tesla planning on going to Mars, we probably already got a base over there anyway. We definitely got a base on the moon. Okay. And what we've been doing on Mars is we've been trying to explore these ruins as we come across them to try to pick up ancient knowledge or things we can find or remnants of things or try to learn because we are totally behind the eight ball. Okay. Now we know one thing that the earth have had five major extinctions on this planet. Five times in the history of the earth, life have been destroyed to 90, 95%, 98%. Five times. Okay. We still don't understand how those things occurred. Like we're thinking the last extinction, the extinction of the dinosaurs. We believe that was caused by a meteor. As you heard, a meteor hit the earth and smashed the dinosaur. You all heard about that. But what science can't explain about that is because when that comet, whatever hit the earth in the Yucatan, if that was a single explosion, you should have a lot of that debris on this side of the world. And on the other side of the world, you should have a lot less. Because as you said, the things would spread out and thin out. When they look into the fossil record, the same thing you have on Mars, you have on the Earth. You have that layer of dirt where there's no life in between after the age of the dinosaur and before the age of mammal. You have that thin layer of where there's nothing. They believe that thin layer is caused by the whatever hit in the Yucatan. But what science can't explain is that thin layer of nothing is uniform all around the planet. It's not thicker in some areas and thinner in other areas. Is uniform all over the planet. How could that be by a single hit? It doesn't make sense. And then you have books like the Urantia book and other books talking about that that humanoid life was trying to be implanted on the earth several times, but it was unsuccessful until the extinction of the dinosaurs and until the extermination of the massive beast, and then humanoid life was finally successfully implanted on the earth. That doesn't sound like it was an accident. Okay. And who's to say that couldn't happen again tomorrow? We know so little. We know so little. And this is why we have invested hundreds of millions of dollars on these space probes. Okay. But not all the things we're doing is just for scientific purposes only. They're only letting us see a very, very, very thin amount of what they're actually doing. They do not want us to know what they're doing in deep space. They do not want us to know. Because, as I said, they are finding things, they're uncovering things. And some of these things, like that, when they go and explore places like this, they discover stuff which we don't even have the comprehension of. It would be fascinating if we could get our hands on all the pictures. But if we did, maybe it would just scare us to throw the covers over our heads. Maybe already the few pictures that they have released is showing us things that we cannot understand. What is that? And if things like that are being taken from outer space, that does not look natural. Is that a city? Or that's some kind of complex? What is that? Now, before, you know, scientists believed that all life started on the earth and the earth started with the things in the ocean mixing together. But now, even mainstream science believes that life started on Mars and then came to the earth because they have found evidence of things and microbes and things like that, that the picture doesn't fit together properly. And we know that that Mars was covered with oceans at a time where on the earth you only had the most basic of life. And it wasn't until Mars totally was devastated that life didn't really start on the earth until around 1.3, 1.5 billion years ago. Before that time, the earth had no life on it. And this is another thing science can't figure out. If the earth is 4.3 billion years old, how come life on earth didn't start until 1.3, 1.5 billion years ago? The earth was void of life up until that time. This is very, very strange. Let's talk about some other things that we have found out. See, now you might say, but Lynn, why is this important? Because once we leave our blue marble, we're leaving the safety of our neighborhood. Okay. As long as we thought we was, we have always had these dreams and nightmares and books about war of the world, this or that, them coming to us, them invading us, and what would we do if they invaded us? And we have never been able to come up with what to do. But most people believe now, most scientists believe that the reason we haven't been invaded all this time is because they don't want to invade us. Because they have had thousands and thousands of years to invade us if they want to. And I believe the reason we haven't been invaded because we was invaded thousands and thousands of years ago. They have never left. They're still here. And you see on top of Mars, it looks like there's a hole in the top. Maybe that's just my imagination, but it looks like there's a hole in the top of Mars. There's so much we don't know. We are babies when it comes to this type of stuff. But I'm fascinated myself, and I have seen hundreds and hundreds of these pictures. There are websites you can go online where you can see some of the pictures that have been released. And remember, of all the pictures that are being released where they're finding all kind of weird stuff, we're only seeing 1/10 of 1% of what's out there. So this is very, very mind blowing. This is very exciting. Well, it's exciting and also scary because, you know, there's an old book that talk about how after this war that was thousands of years ago, that the survivors of that war was brought to was brought to this planet. And that matches what science says, that life started on Mars and then migrated to the Earth. Okay. And is that what's going to be the future of man thousands of years from now? Or tens of thousands of years from now, that we're going to be on another planet and the Earth will be destroyed just like Mars is, because either we destroyed it or it's going to get destroyed or whatever. And is that what life does? It just hop from one planet to another as it uses things up. Look at these things on Mars we have taken a picture of. What are those on the surface? Are those boulders? Are those trees? Are those science says those are just rock formations. It's going to be very, very interesting when we finally get the chance to go over there, the public, and see things. It's going to be very, very, very interesting. But we are not alone. And with our little visitation friends, you know, if war can happen on, and if Mars was destroyed by alien invasion, if Mars was destroyed by the inhabitants of the planet blowing themselves up, we really don't know. But what we are putting together now and figure that what happened on Mars was very sudden and very violent. As I told you, there is a crack on Mars which run hundreds of miles. And we do not believe that crack on Mars is natural. Look at that. Now that's just a rock formation. You know that is natural. Okay. Some of this stuff, is that an alien base? Is that one of our bases? That is not natural. Look at all the straight lines. We may not be alone. And on some of the space probes, we have seen strange things take off and land and things go across the sky. So maybe we're not alone up there. Okay. But since we're only been talking about Mars, let's go beyond Mars for a minute. We have discovered strange stuff on several planets. Do you know on the top of Saturn there's a giant hexagon which is which is big enough to fit hundreds of Earths? Is sitting on top of the planet, a giant hexagon structure. What is that? It's just a rock formation. So, this our solar system might have been inhabited by lots of beings long time ago that for whatever reason they abandoned their bases. Or maybe what happened in our solar system is what happened in the Pacific Ocean. When we was fighting Japan in World War II, we went on a lot of those little islands out there and built bases, this and that and whatever. And when the war was over, we abandoned everything. Okay. And maybe that's what we're coming across now when we go to these planets and we go to different and we look at different moons and asteroids, we see things that look artificial. Maybe there's things that was left over from the war. Okay. And maybe hopefully that thing is not moving. And even if it is moving, would you want to go over there and say hi to it? I don't think so. But that does not look natural. What we're hoping to be able to do one day is to take Mars, and we're going to try to. One thing that we might try to do hundreds of years from now is we're going to try to heat up the planet. And there are some ideas about we can terraform Mars. And if we put some giant radioactive heaters on that planet, that would release a lot of heat and pressure. Just like it would be like a nuclear power plant, but instead of trying to uh, maintain the heat inside the building, you purposely venting all the heat from the reactors. Because people figured that if we could warm up Mars by around 10 to 20 degrees, that we could slowly bring the planet back alive. But we don't have the technology to do that at this time. We might be able to, warm up a little section that's a mile across or whatever. We don't have the technology today to make atmospheric heaters to warm up the entire planet. Okay. We do not have the technology. Okay. That was one thing Russia was testing out a few years ago. Russia put up a big satellite, and they with big giant mirrors, because Russia suffered from these super long bad winters, and they was going to try to warm up with those big giant mirrors to see if you could shine the mirrors on some of their winter cities and try to warm things up. It didn't work. Okay. We don't have the technology at this time. Okay. But this is exactly what it would look like on the bottom of our oceans if all the water was boiled off. It would just be covered like that. So a lot of the things we're saying that looks very strange, that look like that is what exactly our oceans would look the exact same way if you removed everything. Okay. So our new space probe we sent to Mars was going to, since we some of our testing equipment have indicated that there is a lot of methane coming from the surface. Methane comes from things decaying, and there's nothing on the surface that should be decaying. So we're thinking that things might be alive inside the planet. So on our new space probe, we actually was planning on drilling into the dirt and taking some very deep soil samples. But when we tried to dig into the Martian soil, it's as hard as lead. We could only get a few, not even a few inches into the soil. What are those? Are those trees? Are those chemical deposits? Are those rock formations? And you can see on all these pictures, you see the writing at the bottom. The writing is the bottom is it says the space probe that took the picture, the date, and the catalog number. How come most of y'all have never seen pictures like this about Mars? Because they want you to stay focused on what's going on here. But I believe that Mars is not a totally dead planet. And I believe that there's still some life on that planet. And I believe that not only us, and this is what make our little teams out there so dangerous, because there are not only us roaming around on that planet, there are some other things out there too. Okay. And we have come across a lot of things which we don't really know what they are. Again, that is a rock. You see the NASA symbol. That is not a fossil. That is a rock, a picture of a rock that was taken on Mars. For some reason, I do not believe that's a rock. But I'm not an expert. It could be wrong. I've never seen a rock that looks like that. And those look like teeth. But this thing's definitely not human. Look how many eyes that thing had. That definitely was not from our side of the world. Okay. This is some very, 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 very strange stuff. Very strange. Let me see if anybody got any questions before I go further. Do anybody have any ideas of what these things are? Do that look like a rock to you? Do that look like a mineral specimen to you? Do that look like something you just find in your garden? Okay. So, but anyway, we need to get out. We are slowly getting out there. And the military is at least 50 to 75 years ahead of us. So they're already out there. They're already doing their stuff. They're just not informing us of what they're doing. Okay. And that's what the secret space program is all about, to keep it secret. Okay. But this is our heritage. And what they're doing in outer space is the same thing that Christopher Columbus did. Remember, Columbus, we already know, didn't discover America. It was already here. Okay. But when Columbus came to America in 1492, most people in Europe didn't know about the New World until almost 200 years later. The Spanish kept the New World a secret for over 100 years. Okay. They didn't want no one to know. And Europe was trying to figure out where's Spain getting all this gold from? That's the reason why they kept it a secret. Because Spain discovered gold in the New World and silver. Look at that there. Are those trees? Are those mineral deposits? I would say those look like some kind of tree. They look like a tree line. That's a picture of the North Pole of Mars. Very, very, very strange stuff. So we got a question. Tesla supposedly is going to go over there in 5, 10 years. If you had the opportunity to go, Tesla already said it's a one-way trip. Musk said it's one-way trip. It's not no you go on vacation for 2 weeks and come back. You're going. And if you do come back, you got to wait for your rotation. Rotation could be a year, 2 years, 3 years. Would you be willing to go to the great unknown? But that's what they did back in Columbus Day. They got on those ships, especially back in the 1500s. A lot of those ships didn't make it. And they sailed. And most of the soldiers that crossed was a one-way ticket. They never came back. Look at that. It looks like a forest. So you can see it says NASA right there. It got all the information. You can blow it up yourself. You can look that up yourself. What is that? But if Mars was, they believe Mars had a big giant ocean, unlike the Earth we have two big oceans. They think Mars had one giant ocean and one giant piece of land. The piece of land was humongous. And then the other side was covered by a lot of ocean. And today it's, maybe just like with everything else. What we're seeing now is the remnants, the survivors of what destroyed life on Mars. Maybe 95, 98% of all life on Mars was destroyed. And we're just seeing the 2%, the 5% that survived. But if you had a spacecraft, would you want to land right outside that area and see what those things are? What is that? We have found what looks like there's some boring system or some kind of underground system that runs for thousands of miles. You can see it's like it's some kind of it looks like a transportation system or something. We really don't know. Or maybe it's just a rock that stretches for hundreds of miles that looks like that. Or maybe that's an alien base. We could land right outside of that and knock on the door and see who answers. This is fascinating stuff. This is very fascinating. Okay. Now, the subject of this podcast is there proof that of an ancient nuclear war on Mars? It looks like something happened very big, very rapidly, very destructive. But it didn't destroy everything. Some things are still there. And we have found some underground caverns on Mars, massive caverns. Are you brave enough to go down in there and see where those caverns go and what's down there? We have discovered on the moon what they call some tubes that runs for hundreds of miles on the moon. Even on the moon, would you be willing to go and into underground tunnels on the moon? Even on Mars, it would be even scarier. Who knows what you would come across down there? Okay, but Mars is not a totally dead planet. But I don't think we could ever bring it back alive with our technology, and I don't think the problem we have is since Mars has still have a few things running around on there. What would happen if one of those creatures from Mars, I don't care if it's a rodent or whatever, or a spider or whatever, what would happen if one of those things get, got loose on the Earth? But then that would never happen, right? That's how killer bees got to be in America. You had a scientist from in Argentina that brought some African bees to Argentina to study, and they accidentally got released. The rest is history. And if they got accidentally released in Argentina, how are they in the United States now? We're not next to Argentina. Things move around. We all need to do some research, and we need to learn the lesson that maybe we need to quit playing around with, whatever happened on Mars, we don't want to happen here. Okay. And before we believed in something called mutual assured destruction, that was if somebody released their nuclear bombs, everybody would die. We now don't believe in that anymore. Now we believe in something called we believe that nuclear war is survivable. Maybe they believed on Mars nuclear war was survivable. What could possibly go wrong? I don't want the Earth to look like Mars one day. And we still need to figure out what caused those extinctions 5 times on the Earth. Because if 95 or 98% of all life on Earth died 5 different times, Who's saying that it couldn't happen a sixth time or a seventh time? What is that? You see, you can see like a tunnel at the top. Something goes like underground. This stuff is very, very, very strange. But it's an alien world. So a lot of things we see on Mars, the word is it looks alien because it's an alien world. We haven't found any McDonald golden arches. We haven't found any Starbucks cups. We just see a lot of things that look very weird and very strange. So, yes. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of answers. I don't have a lot of answers. What I wanted to do today is just to introduce you to these photos. And there's hundreds of these weird photos out there, hundreds of them. And all these photos have the space probe that took their name, the date they was taken, everything. This is not just conspiracy theory about some kid because we're not saying that's alien, we're not saying that UFO, we're not saying anything. It's just a space probe took a picture. Oops, I think we've seen that before. They tried to say those are natural shapes. That is not is not man artificial. It's natural. But to me, look at those points. Those look like an arrangement of pyramids and a face. Science would say no, it's just random rocks. Okay. I don't see random there. You need to do some research on your own. You need to do some digging. You need to do some looking. And you can find some of these weird pictures too. You can even send me a copy of them. Okay, send them to me. Because I must have at least 100 of them, but I could use a lot more. And the question is these are the ones that have been released to the public. What about the thousands and hundreds of thousands of pictures that have not been released to the public? There's been at least 15 space probes to go to Mars over the last since what was since the since the days of the we've been exploring. We have seen very, very little. But our close neighbor to us is, I think, hopefully we won't be in, get George Orwell, War of the World. We're not seeing these big giant creatures on the Mars, but there's a lot of very strange things up there. And we can just imagine what life on Mars was like before the big destruction. Did they have civilization as advanced as ours? Did they have as many people? The Earth got almost 7.5 billion people. How many billions of people was on Mars at the time it was destroyed? How many got off? Maybe they had an ark too. You never know. I find this subject very fascinating and very deep. But unfortunately, I don't have many answers. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. Let's try to keep our blue world blue and beautiful, and let's keep life on it. We don't want our planet to look like a deserted, blown up desert 100 or 1,000 years from now. Okay. Let's keep our world. We received a world that was a paradise. Let's give it to our children. I'm Lynn David Livesey, your full spectrum Gnostic. I'm out of here. Thank you so much. Bye.